Howdy.
Hey.
Hey. So, honored to have Julia Christensen Hughes, Dean of the School of Business, for lack of...
College of Business and Economics.
College of Business and Economics at the University of Guelph.
Correct. It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
No, but seriously, it's awesome. There's a whole bunch of backstory to it. I won't get into the whole thing right now, but maybe later on, if you're curious, I'll just do a segment on, how we kind of got to know each other a bit better in terms of the 2014 Business of the Year Award and saying that we had alumni. And anyway.
Yeah, I'm very proud to call you one of mine. And you came through the business school.
That's true.
You're having a huge impact on the community, supporting the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem. And,
Thank you.
And I love seeing Guelph business students staying in Guelph and making an impact on the local community.
Well, thank you. And it's been a ton of fun and a huge ride. And but today's not about me. Today's about you. And as we do, we typically start off with like a little summary of what you've been up to, where you kind of come from, and what you're doing these days.
Yeah.
So let the audience know.
Okay. Well,
What's going on?
I'll say I grew up in Burlington.
B-Town.
Yeah. I came to the University of Guelph for my undergrad in business, in hotel and food.
Huh.
I'm always happy to share that with my students. So I graduated in 1981.
Cool.
And I was a manager with Keg Restaurants for a few years.
Awesome training programs.
Amazing.
They've got 2 team members that worked at the Keg, and both of them just said amazing.
Well,
amazing
I still tell people today that it's informed my approach as a dean.
Really?
Yeah, what I learned about dealing with people and motivating a team and what to do, what not to do.
Cool.
So yeah, and I was with them for a couple of years, and then I went back to school and did my MBA, and I started teaching at the University of Guelph January 1987. So I've been on faculty over 30 years, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And Guelph was a wonderful employer. They supported me while I went back to school and finished my PhD. So my MBA and PhD are both focused on organizational behavior. So the study of people within organizations. And I'm very interested in how we engage talent and how we align systems within the organization to achieve a powerful vision.
Cool.
So those are my topics of interest in terms of my teaching and my research.
So just quickly, Organizational Behavior 1 and 2, one of my top favorite courses in school. Professor, he's going to kill me, Steve Lynch?
Steve Lynch, yes.
I don't know if he's
Steve.
still there.
He's not. Steve is retired, but yeah, he was a great faculty member.
So anyway, quick shout out to Steve Lynch. He kind of looked like Bob Barker, not that
He did.
We just did a Price is Right party. So anyway, sorry, I don't mean to digress, but he was great.
Yeah, no, organizational behavior is an amazing subject, and it's one that not a lot of undergraduate students necessarily fully appreciate until they get out, right?
Expectancy theory stuck with me, and we're working on it like crazy because it's not easy to create.
See, that's great. I love it. I love hearing when the theory you've learned in a class is being applied in a business and helping you achieve your goals.
We're getting there because it's not easy to create roadmaps for all these different roles with expectations of what they can see happening over the next 3 to 5 years. Like that is not easy work.
No.
Cool.
No.
Anyway.
But it's great work.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
Because I found myself in a university environment, I started asking myself these same questions about the university. So what is its purpose in society? Right. What is its purpose with respect to research and teaching and learning, and how effectively are we delivering on that, and what systems are aligned with that goal, and what systems maybe aren't that need to be changed. And so I became a real advocate for universities putting more focus on the quality of teaching and learning, and found myself, I've always believed if you're going to complain, step up and do something about it.
Right?
So I found myself for 10 years as director of a center on campus called Teaching Support Services.
Cool.
And that center was responsible for inspiring faculty in terms of innovation in how they teach and how they design their courses and how they assess student learning.
Awesome.
And then the other thing I always believe, if you're stepping up and doing something, pop your head up and see what's happening within other organizations. So there's an organization in Canada called the Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Education. So it's a group of academics that are passionate about the need to reform higher education in terms of teaching and learning. So I volunteered.
What's it called again? Just so that people...
STLHE, the Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Education.
Awesome.
So I joined that board, and then I became president. So I
Get involved.
Get involved. Show up, right? If you want to make a difference, show up. And so I was president of that organization for 3 years, but as well as, incoming president, past president. So that was a multi-year commitment, and I love doing that work.
Awesome.
I was very passionate about it. I think together, collectively, we brought about a lot of change within the country, within Canadian higher education. But I spent so long challenging the system, I was somewhat surprised yet pleased when the University of Guelph asked me to consider an administrative role within the academic side of the house at Guelph. I first became department chair of Department of Management, a new department, and then a couple of years after that, dean. So I've been dean for 8 years now.
Awesome. So that was a remarkably specific and accurate chronology of the last 30 years.
So here I am.
Yeah, and now you're in a car.
Here I am, and now I'm in a car with you.
Oh, that's fantastic. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up was just this, especially being the dean of a business school.
Yeah.
How do you keep the classroom relevant? Like in our space, and I'm having the opportunity to talk to a professor at the University of Toronto in a couple of weeks who's teaching marketing. But similar line of conversation of like the world's moving so fast.
Yeah.
And even at Intrigue, we'll do training material, and it's out of date in 3 months. Now the concepts aren't, but the tactics are, and the point is though the world's just moving so fast. So I know, and I've heard a lot of people talk about how academia can't keep up. It's not positioned to do that, but I don't feel like that's absolutely true. So I wanted to get some perspective from you, if that's possible, about like how do you keep the classrooms relevant?
Okay, well, I have all kinds of ideas. So now I'm just madly trying to organize my thoughts in my brain, right? But I always start big picture and work my way down, right? So I would say to begin with, a question that really consumed a lot of my time when I first became dean was, what was our strategic differentiation going to be, right? So I uniquely had the opportunity to become dean of a new college, a new college of business. I was hired as dean to create a vision and to bring people together, right? And then establish that vision. And so...
what a cool, unique position to be in.
Yeah, huge opportunity.
Awesome.
And so what was so intriguing to me is that as...
No pun intended.
Oh, yeah.
That never gets old. That never gets old. Sorry.
What was intriguing to me was when we ran focus groups, like any good organization that's developing a strategic plan and trying to understand what's your competitive space and what is going to be your unique point of differentiation. We hired a consultant, came in, helped us go through the process, did lots of focus groups, interview surveys with our students, alumni, our faculty, and our staff, right? And what we heard over and over again is that people came to Guelph for a different kind of business experience. That they could have gone to, and then name one of our several competitors, right? I'd say that here we are in Guelph, we're totally surrounded, right?
Yeah,
whether
in a big way.
Right?
Oh yeah, all over the place, within 50 kilometers.
Ivy, Rodman, right? Yeah. Even Brock or McMaster, right? So it was totally surrounded. So here we are. So why come to Guelph for business? And students told us that they came because of their heart. That they believed that business could be done differently than a cutthroat, competitive, Wolf of Wall Street kind of orientation that they perceived, rightly or wrongly, that some of our competitors endorsed.
Right.
That they felt that by visiting campus, by talking to our students, that they felt we were supporting a much more collaborative model, more of a team orientation, and also business with integrity, business that takes a long-term view. So we went through this whole process, and ultimately where we landed, and it was a clicker vote with about 70% of our faculty there, and unanimously endorsed that our vision would become to develop leaders for a sustainable world. So a big focus on leadership, big focus on global perspective, and a sustainable orientation.
I'm giggling because Paul and I both went to Guelph.
Yes.
We decided to create a 100-year company.
Yeah.
And have the mindset of a 100-year company.
Exactly.
And the purpose of the company is empowering leaders to strengthen communities.
See? So this
like,
was
how
this.
did you
I know.
It's just
I know.
crazy how
so
similar
this
that is.
was the story I heard over and over again.
Oh, that's weird.
And then I tried to think, why? Like, how is it, right, that this was the consistent message, regardless of who we spoke to? And I went back to our history, and that's why I commented, like, seeing your history wall on Intrigue Media. I believe that as a leader, you need this sort of prescient vision, but where does it come from? You just don't make it up, right? It comes from listening and perceiving opportunity and aligning those things, but you also need to know where you came from.
Right.
So, when I had the amazing opportunity to lead the renovation of McDonald Hall, I went into the archives and had teams of people reading things and bringing information forward, and I was absolutely struck. This is beautiful, by the way. It's a nice country drive.
I know, exactly.
Yeah, this is great.
We're in Guelph, too, right?
It's lovely.
Oh, it's so nice.
So here we are in the countryside. Going into our archives, I learned about the history of Adelaide Hoodless. Do you know the story of Adelaide Hoodless?
No, I couldn't tell you.
She was a remarkable woman who grew up just north of Brantford in the 1800s. She was from a large, poor farming family.
Right.
Adelaide, as they said in the parlance of the day, married well. She married well.
Into the furniture manufacturers.
Yes, an entrepreneurial family in Hamilton. But tragically, her infant son died from drinking unpasteurized milk.
Oh.
She made it her life's work to bring higher education to young women so that they could become schooled scientifically in raising a healthy family.
Awesome.
So the science of nutrition, the psychology of child rearing, the economics of running a household budget. Right. She convinced the McDonald brothers, two East Coast Canadians, non-smokers, who were busy making a fortune selling cigarettes to the Americans, who'd had their supply cut off because of the Civil War.
Crazy.
So the McDonald brothers were sailing ships up the St. Lawrence, down the eastern seaboard to the southern U.S., filling up with tobacco, return to Montreal, turn them into cigarettes, keep going.
Crazy.
They were non-smokers. They thought smoking was a filthy habit, but they perceived an opportunity and decided to capitalize. So Adelaide convinced them to establish the McDonald Institutes.
Crazy. Providing
the opportunity for young women of the day to come to university and become educated.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, the McDonald Institutes were created at McGill and at the University of Guelph. Adelaide also founded the Women's Institutes, which became a global phenomenon. Women's Institutes were established around the world. My granny was president of the Women's Institute, her chapter in England, in a small community.
Like, how is it full circle?
I know,
like,
I know.
Crazy.
And I recently learned from my mom that when my grandparents came to visit when I was a little girl, she went to visit Adelaide Hoodless.
Crazy.
Isn't that remarkable?
That is remarkable, and how it goes full circle.
I know. So you fast forward to the 1960s, when programs in home economics started to fall out of favor.
Right.
The University of Guelph had these kitchens and these mock apartments where the young women had been learning their craft, their science.
Yeah.
The hospitality industry, because of the automobile, was burgeoning.
Right.
With hotel chains, motel chains, restaurants popping up everywhere.
Yep.
So we had essentially bedrooms and kitchens. The hospitality industry approached the university, said we need a program to support managers.
Crazy.
And so the first Bachelor of Commerce program at the University of Guelph was launched in Hotel and Food Administration nearly 50 years ago.
Awesome.
But it evolved, as did consumer studies and real estate and housing and these other programs. They evolved from the foundation that Adelaide laid.
Crazy.
And I believe now that that's why we're different. Because those were our roots, was caring about families and caring about communities.
And it's just been kind of ingrained in everything in the institutional kind of approach.
Yes, it was there in the culture.
Yeah.
And so that when the College of Business and Economics was formed, that just naturally emerged as our competitive positioning. And so just like I did with STLHE, as soon as this was clarified that this was going to be our vision, and now we had succinct words, right, to describe it, then it's how do you live it?
Right.
How do you bring it alive, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, there's lots of things we're doing internally to align our systems against that, but also externally. So just like with STLHE, I looked around to see what are the organizations globally that are working in this space. And so we learned about something called the Globally Responsible Leadership Initiative. We became members of that. And we also became signatories to an initiative by the United Nations.
Right.
So they have the Global Compact and another initiative, a parallel initiative called the Principles for Responsible Management Education. So there's around 700 business schools from around the world that are signatories to advancing business as a force for good. Awesome. And making progress against the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we've quickly become recognized as champions, global leaders in that space. So we connect with business schools from around the world who share our values, and we share best practices. And we're actually hosting the North American Conference this fall at the University of Guelph. So there are business school deans from around the world coming to Guelph who understand their roles as being champions of transformative change within the business school environment.
Awesome.
So that's how I perceive my role, right? As helping.
And the question was, how do you stay relevant in the classroom? Boom!
Well, you know what? Honestly, one of the biggest honors of my career is I was invited to address the United Nations General Assembly in New York City on behalf of these deans about the role of business schools in helping make the world a better place.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal opportunity. So in my role as dean, I can identify these external groups. I can help get us connected. But you have to embed it beyond the culture. I mean, as I said, it was there sort of in a grassroots kind of way, right? So it can be there in your grassroots, it can be there in your vision, it can be there in your external engagement, but how do you get the faculty to live it, right? And how do they perceive the relevance? And so there you need to support your faculty and your students, right, that are really championing it.
They're the ones that are living it, they're the faces of it.
Right. So I try to bring resources to bear. So we've had students and faculty participating in these conferences. We've had students winning awards at the United Nations, traveling to New York, meeting with other students from around the world.
Awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Our students have been involved in writing case studies on companies that live these values, and the UN recently gave out 17 awards to students around the world writing these, and our students won for writing up the Lucky Ironfish project.
Which is amazing.
Right? And another one of our grads
talk about
that's
science
doing so
and
well.
Nutrition and family.
Yes.
Like raising a family.
Yeah, and a business model. That's the point, right? It's a business model that makes this amazing business be sustainable.
Well, when you described the Adelaide, whose full name is?
Adelaide Hoodless.
Adelaide Hoodless.
Yeah.
I was just like, well, how crazy is that?
Also say, within a university environment, faculty have a lot of freedom, right? That's just the nature of their job. It's a fabulous career to have. So they have freedom in terms of the research that they pursue. So I can encourage faculty to do their research in this area, but we of course have faculty doing research on all kinds of subjects.
Right.
But when it comes to the curriculum, this is where we can be a little more directive. And so within the Bachelor of Commerce program, for example, we have 9 majors. Each of those majors has agreed upon learning outcomes, and the province requires us to engage in periodic reviews where we conduct surveys, with our students, with our alumni, with our faculty. We identify areas where we need to up our game. So you're talking about the relevance of the curriculum, right? So there is a framework that directs faculty, but these reviews are powerful. I love them. Yeah, and we've just recently hired somebody who's supporting this whole review process to make sure that the voices of our students and our alumni and our employers, all of our stakeholders are heard.
Cool.
And then identifies priorities for change. So
awesome.
that's built into the system, and by our faculty bringing their research into their classrooms, that's a point of innovation as well. And then when gaps are identified, my job is to find the resources to help address the gap, right? And so whether that's fundraising or lobbying the institution or finding creative ways to redirect internal resources, that's my accountability. And so I'm always excited when we have the opportunity to hire new faculty. And I know you'll be interested in our marketing department. We've got several new hires underway right now, including one in innovation.
Very cool.
Yes, yeah. So we're working on that.
I mean, that's putting teeth into it. I mean,
exactly.
When you bring somebody in specifically mandated to innovate,
yes,
then yeah, that's creating relevance in the classroom.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
so that was a long-winded answer to your question.
Well, but it was a pretty rich answer though too, because there's a lot of stuff even I learned. Like I had no idea. Like that's pretty cool stuff. So, you know, kind of as we're getting back.
Yeah.
This last piece I kind of mentioned before we got into the car was this advice. If you can go back 10, 20 years, whatever it is, and give yourself advice that would help you do what you've done better.
Yeah.
And one of those, you know, I wish I had known then what I know now type of ideas, what would it be?
I would say that looking back, I'm surprised by how all the pieces fit together. You know, even though at different points in my career it might have seemed that I was diverging from a path.
Right.
I'm amazed at how they've all come together in my current role as dean.
Right.
And I guess the advice, and it's advice I took, I literally took from myself, despite some people strongly trying to convince me to go in another direction,
right,
is to follow your passion. And, you know, I had mentioned you've got the Simon Sinek quote up in your office about know your purpose, know your why. And I love his TED Talks and his different YouTube videos, because I think that's what's driven me. You know, when I was spending time championing, teaching and learning and taking time out, sort of adding to my own responsibilities, right, by volunteering as president of this organization, people said, are you kidding me? Are you crazy? Like investing all your time? Like you're going to become labeled as one of those faculty that really cares about students. Like going, and what's wrong with that, right? And people thinking that somehow that meant I wasn't quite fitting in with a university environment where research is so important.
Right,
and
right.
I said, this is what I'm passionate about, and this is our obligation. This is our commitment to students and their families who have invested so much money in joining us and you know, wanting they have dreams, right?
Yeah,
and our job's to support it. And how do we do that? So I've always been passionate about what I'm working on. I've always believed that I needed to help make a difference. And so I would just, and it had certainly, I don't think it's hurt my career. It was so funny. After I was appointed dean, I got a phone call from a grad student.
Are you kidding me?
And I said, look, I had no idea. When I was in high school and, you know, choosing the University of Guelph, I had no idea that one day I'd ever consider becoming a faculty member, never mind dean.
Right.
But I feel that the harder I've worked, the more opportunities have arisen. And
well, I think it's just amazing that, you know, passion for me anyway, and I've seen it in lots of other people, and doing these interviews, starting to get exposed to it more and more, it makes it really easy to be energized about what you do. It doesn't matter if you pile in volunteerism on top of all these other things that we do in our lives. When we're passionate about it, it's easy to push through, and it's not even pushing. It's more like an obligation and this drive to make it better and make a difference.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And I also think what it does is it gives you strength when you're going against the current. You know, because if you're a change maker, if you're committed to transformation, you're going to encounter barriers all the time.
Everywhere.
Right? Whether it's cultural, political, systemic, whatever. And so you have to believe in what you're doing. And I'm not saying without considering risk or doing that blindly. I mean, obviously you have to assess the situation and choose your time, choose your levers, right? But if you believe in what you're doing, when you encounter what seem like barriers, then it's, okay, well, how do I creatively get around this, right? Or what's the creative solution to what might seem like an insurmountable problem? And the more you do that, the more you realize that there's always a creative answer. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting right now, even with our organization, it went from essentially 12 people at the beginning of last year to 30 this year. And, you know, we were kind of like 8, 9, 10 people for a year or 2, 3, 12 people. So I had an opportunity to like get my legs underneath me, and it was very much like a small group of dedicated professionals going out there to like make a difference.
Yeah.
And now I've got a larger group, and it's nothing, you know, we're not a large group, but it's larger. It's double plus, and it's
you're seeing that growth. And
well, and the dynamic is so different, and sometimes it seems in the last like couple months, it's like how do we deal with this stuff? And I got to reinvent myself, and we got to reinvent ourselves as a company to be able to act differently and act like we need to act to become a 1,000-person company, so we can instigate the change we want to see happen in the world.
Right.
But it's really interesting that you bring up this idea that when you're passionate about your work, it's a lot easier to move through the obstacles, around, up, below, whatever, but get through them.
But this is where I would say it's really interesting you would share that, because it's a sort of a similar speech, I guess, that I've been sharing with my team, is that the college, now just over 10 years old, we've been like a startup, right? We've had that entrepreneurial spirit and had to be very creative about how we do things, but now we're at the point for us to get to the next level. We have to become more disciplined. Some of our systems have to become more sophisticated, right? The more people that you have, and through your growth, you can't use the same operating style, right, that you used when there was a small enough group that casual, more informal conversation would help keep people on the same page. And you also have to, no matter how much it pains you, hire people with skills and talents different than your own, right? And
especially,
respect that.
Especially that.
Right? And so that you've got, if you're a big picture person, then you need people who have that detailed orientation or get so excited, right, about
process.
Yes,
and standards.
Yes. Exactly. So that's part of the journey. And then figuring out how to provide leadership when people are bringing such different talents to the table and have everybody feeling valued, even though they're contributing in different ways.
Yeah, just figure that out.
Yeah. No, that's the job.
No, I hear you. No, I totally get you. So thank you a ton for doing this.
Oh, it was so much fun. Thanks for having me.
That was actually a pleasure.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks guys.
Okay.
And hopefully share it out.
Next time I want to sing and dance.
Yeah, I'm going to make that happen, because next time we'll do it GoPro. Yeah. And then we'll get music going. Okay. And we can definitely sing and dance. So stay tuned for the next one. Okay. Any requests, put them in the comments below. Okay. Thanks guys.